Growing up, I played football, I was on the wrestling team, I did martial arts. I never participated in any type of endurance sport or training until after I was injured in an aircraft accident in 2013. I consider myself a good all-around athlete, and when a friend of mine gave me an old racing hand cycle to use, I signed up and competed in my very first ever bike race, Paracycling Road Nationals, in 2017 with just 2 months of riding experience. I quickly realized that there was something different about this sport. In the first day of the 3-day event, despite my very best efforts, I came in dead last, 20 minutes slower than everyone else, and it was only a 25-minute race. People flew past me like I was standing still, and I just couldn't wrap my head around how they were going so fast, because I was fresh out of wheelchair bodybuilding, and I was way stronger than all the other athletes on the field. What I didn't realize at the time was that fast twitch muscle fibers, like a bodybuilder type muscle, and an endurance muscle fiber, like an ultra runner type of muscle, are completely different. I had underdeveloped slow twitch muscle fibers and had to essentially start from scratch, training in a completely new and different way. And it was incredibly hard and humbling, going from being one of the best athletes in all the sports I played to being literally the worst athlete on the field. Now, I hate to even share this with you, but the next day in the 30-mile road race, I got lapped by the lead group, and they had to pull me off the course because I was like a human roadblock. I didn't even get to finish the race. I was so embarrassed at my performance. I just packed up my bike and left. I didn't even stay for the third day of racing. Fast forward to present day. For years, I've worked hard with an Olympic coach and have ridden so many miles on the hand cycle that if there was a paved road around the world at the equator, I would have circled the entire globe, and I would be on my second lap right now. In 2021, I traveled to Belgium as an independent with the U.S. Olympic team and competed at World Championships. Also, I took the gold at National Paracycling Road Championships here stateside. Now, being a good hand cyclist and being a good speaker, surprisingly, has some pretty exact overlap. Here are my 5 most significant points that training and racing the hand cycle can teach you about speaking. Point number 1, my performance dramatically improved when I began working with 2-time Olympian Tom Davis as my coach. I humbled myself and submitted myself to his direction because I had come to the end of what I can do all by myself. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I needed someone that was years ahead of me to fill in the gaps. Likewise, in speaking, the same holds true. Many times, we don't know what we don't know, and we need someone that is years ahead of us to mentor us and to keep us challenged and growing in the right direction. I remember my first Toastmaster speech when the and the counter said that I had 57 of them in my 5-minute icebreaker. That was pretty useful information to have. I didn't know what I didn't know. How we transition from unknown to known fellow Toastmasters is for us to be humble and to continue to surround ourselves with wise counsel and mentors as often as we can. Point number 2, in the book, With Winning in Mind, by Olympic gold medalist Lanny Basham, he makes a solid case against why trying too hard is so detrimental to our performance and how it is completely opposite from the sports philosophy of the day. Most oftentimes we hear things like, leave it all out on the field, or give it 110%. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen someone overacting or in a speech try too hard and it comes off as awkward and incongruent? Or in a social setting, someone who tries way too hard to fit in? In all my years of racing, I never even considered the possibility that I could be trying too hard. Here is the solution. Are you ready for it? Focus on process rather than outcome. In bike racing, as well as speaking, a perfectly executed blueprint is a thing of beauty. Although I could probably give a whole keynote speech on this very subject, I hope you will at least give some thought to being process-minded rather than outcome-minded in the execution of your next speech. Point number 3. In a few weeks, I'm headed to Phoenix, Arizona for a 3-day pro bike race called the Valley of the Sun Stage Race. This will be my 5th year racing this exact race. I've spent a great deal of time thinking about the course and what strategies to use to fit my strengths. For example, anytime I go out for a training ride here in Colorado, I always get at least 1,500, 2,000 feet of climbing, which is great training because everybody knows in bike racing, it is won or lost on the hills. On the road race in Phoenix, it just so happens that the finish line sits atop of a 1.5 mile climb. Perfect for this Colorado Billy Goat. All I have to do is stay right behind my competition, let him pull me around the course in his draft, try not to get dropped, conserve as much energy as I can until the final hill, and then climb like a homesick angel to victory. Because I have raced this course many times before, I'm not racing a new race. I'm simply perfecting a known quantity. My point as it relates to speaking, it has been said that great speeches are not written, they are rewritten. Keep in mind, most high-paid keynote speakers, they don't have 2 or 3 or 5 different speeches. They have one. And they constantly tweak and change little sections to make them polished masterpieces. Remember, great speeches are not written, they are rewritten. Point number 4, I call this one the Matt Updike. Matt Updike was a Paralympian hand cyclist back in 2008, 2012, and he still lives here in Denver. And every now and then he just shows up at random races and crushes people. What's even more mysterious is he never posts on social media. You never see his rides on Strava. He is, for all intents and purposes, a shroud of secrecy, a hand cycle ninja. A few years back, he raced a time trial series here at Cherry Creek Park every Wednesday for 6 weeks straight. Brandon Lyons, who was at the time a full-time resident athlete at the U.S. Olympic Training Center, who was hailed as the next up-and-coming hand cycle golden boy, also did the Wednesday night races. Brandon Lyons beat Updike in all 6 races by a huge margin, painting the picture that Matt wasn't even in the same league. Later that year at Nationals, Matt Updike shows up and crushes Brandon and wins the gold. It then became blatantly obvious that Updike deliberately sandbagged all the Cherry Creek races to gain a psychological edge over Brandon to take the national title. To this very day, Every time I see Brandon, I remind him not to get updiked. He's so mad. And with speeches, just like in racing, you are only as good as your last race. Let me encourage you all to be like Updike, showing up out of nowhere like a speaking ninja, surprising your audience with world-class presentations, leaving them full of awe and wonder. Adopt the mindset that you're only as good as your last speech. And finally, point number 5, the most important key element to endurance training that goes hand in hand with my 4 other points is this. To know and not to do is not to know. Years ago, while training with Coach and completing all my workouts, I was in the gym 3 times a week and getting good sleep. I finally had to jump the last hurdle that would bring the race season all together. I was forced to admit to myself that Red Bull and donuts were not the breakfast choices of champions. Oh, Krispy Kreme, how I miss you so. I had to finally be honest with myself and take a hard look at my nutrition. Most of the things I ate were not optimal ways to fuel a human body. Now, don't miss the key word there, optimal. When I began being honest with myself, my diet changed. As this relates to speaking, to avoid stagnation, always remember, to know and not to do is not to know. Be hungry to be better. Seek dynamic ways to communicate information and be an action taker. In recap, my 5 points are as follows. 1, surround yourself with wise counsel. 2, focus on process rather than outcome. 3, great speeches are not written, they are rewritten. 4, don't get updiked. You're only as good as your last speech. And 5, to know and not to do is not to know. Whether you want to be a world-class hand cyclist or a world-class speaker, implementing these powerful points will take your speech to the next level. Now, let me close by saying there is a bonus lesson that I demonstrated in this talk that I will share with anyone who wishes to stay after the meeting for a few minutes. I promise you it'll be well worth your time, and you will not find this technique in any of the Toastmasters literature. Fellow Toastmasters, may you tackle 2023 in the spirit of Kanai, constant and never-ending improvement. Mr. Toastmaster.